What does it all mean? It's about onion. We are Myth Vision.
Home of Myth Vision Podcast and Myth Vision Radio Group. My co-host is the one and only, the wise one himself, Kevin Maxwell. And I mean that, folks. Kevin Maxwell thought about this correlation between the zodiac and the political parties in ancient Israel. And he's got the summer solstices and the equinoxes lined up with the political parties. And that had me thinking. And next thing I know, I was writing a book on the subject. I'm still doing it right now. So, Kevin comes up with an idea. He ties you up all year long. So anyway, Kevin's co-hosting with me this time. I'm Dr. Luther G. Williams. We are on Facebook, so give us a like, won't you? And please remember to like and subscribe. You can comment. You can discuss our material on YouTube. And folks, this is not some Middle Eastern snake handling. You can catch our PayPal and Patreon accounts. Don't let them wiggle out of your grasp, okay? Show us some warm and fuzzy, won't you? We've got an in-depth show with renowned mythicist scholar Dr. Richard Carrier. We'll be discussing his book entitled On the Historicity of Jesus. And then we've got two more shows after that planned with Dr. Robert Price, because he is a favorite of yours. You've let us know that. And so we'll be talking with him about the legacy of the Dutch radical school and what it means to be a complete textual scholar. But back with us today, we're excited because we've got author Michael Ledo with us. And Michael has now written two books on celestial mythology called On Earth as It Is in Heaven, written in 2009, and The Secret Astrology of the Bible, which he wrote the following year. They are both available on Amazon.com. One of them is available on Kindle. That's the first book, On Earth as It Is in Heaven. Both excellent volumes. And Michael is his own worst critic. He will begin to, and has already begun to, revise and amend certain assertions as his thinking progresses. He still, though, is convinced that the Bible consists of many astro myths, which he shall share with us today. So please welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast, Michael Ledo. Michael, it's great to have you with us.
And it's always great to be here. I hope to become a favorite in the future. I like to start out. Last time we started off with Egyptian hieroglyphs, not hieroglyphs, but Egyptian carvings. I like to go back, say, a few thousand years, because we did the Isis, Neith, Virgo type thing on that one. And I want to go back a little further, say 25,000 BC. In France.
Oh, that sounds good. We can connect with that, Michael. And you're already a favorite, so you're just cementing your position. Have at it.
So this is the Venus of La Salle, very famous sculpture. Apparently, this is her face looking at it, and that's her hair, though I really can't make too much out of it. She is barefoot and pregnant, so we know there's a trailer park nearby. But the important aspect, is the horn right here.
All right.
This is the horn. This is the sliver. The moon god would wear the horn because it would show the phases of the moon. She's holding the horn, and this has 13 marks on it, which is the lunar year, the calendar. So you got the 13 marks for the number of lunar months in a solar month, which is interesting because 13 was the number of the associated with female, menstruation. I guess you don't have male menstruation, but it was associated with that cycle. An interesting aspect, sex was taboo during that time. Now, on Friday, that was the day they would make love in honor to Venus. However, Friday the 13th, you have a contradiction. You have the 13, which is your taboo, and then you also have to make love for your goddess. So that's how that came in as being a taboo day, Friday the 13th. That's where that superstition came from. Now, also from this same area is this guy right here. It looks like this is a leg. I thought he was Enzite Man there for a while, but I think that's a leg.
Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
But on this guy, he has a belt. So you got to ask yourself, what guy wears a belt? Could that be an early version of Orion?
Yeah, Orion. I was gonna say.
Here's his head. And it looks like he has his arm around something. That would be where maybe that should be where the bull would be, but it's broken off here, and there's no telling what the heck that is there. But I wanted to. I mean, you can get information from that. Could be an earliest depiction that we have of Orion. Then again, it may not.
You know that Venus piece with the 13 months. I'm thinking about that little intercalation thing they used to do, because 12 at 30 days apiece for a month would not be enough to cover the year once they adjusted and found out that the real year is 365.24 days and not 360 days. So the 13th, does that make up for that? Is that putting in that extra month?
Well, that 13, it's more like 12 and a half months, really, when you, for the lunar cycle, it's not quite right. But when you get on that lunar month, it kicks out for a couple of weeks, and that's why like Ramadan and all these different celebrations are all at different times every year. They keep pushing them back. I know one time they had a hissy fit because it fell on 9/11, and it was like, hey, you know what? That's just how the calendar works. But I think the important thing to look at on that is that it could not be a true Venus. I mean, Venus was Virgo and the planet Venus. And she was an earth goddess associated with the moon. So she was probably, if anything, a moon goddess, which they had in Europe, like Greece. Greece had a moon goddess.
Right.
So I'm thinking that the Venus title may not quite be correct. Well, I don't know for certain, but who knows?
Here's what I'm thinking with the first picture is, well, is it 13? Because if you count the ends of the thing she's holding, you might get 14, and then of course in the genealogies in the Bible there's 14 generations between each one. There's 14 days till the new moon. I guess the new moon is a 29.5-day cycle, which leaves, actually I'm just reading about this in this book, Astronomy and Empire in the Ancient Andes. He talks a little bit about how you can't really connect this stuff necessarily to the Bible, but with astronomy and ancient astronomy, there's the intercalation month to maintain alignment between the lunar calendar and the solar year. So it says, after 3 years, the annual 11-day excess between 12 lunar months and a solar year accumulates to about 30 days. This results in the periodic need to add an intercalation month. So then it would be a 13-month year every 3 years or something like that. So maybe that's where this 13 could come from too. So I've grabbed all these books.
I don't know if they were that sophisticated on their calendars.
Yeah, maybe not.
I was kind of wondering. I hope your viewers don't turn off, but I wanted to mention something that's odd. This is probably the most discredited author in the entire world, is Immanuel Velikovsky. This is Ages in Chaos. He wrote the book Worlds in Collision, Earth in Upheaval. Basically what he did was he claimed that Venus popped out of Jupiter where the red spot is and went around as the comet and almost collided, and Mars was there and it almost hit the Earth, and that's why we have the Red Sea parted, and that's where it caused all the plagues and the Exodus and everything else. And
Michael, what is this guy doing? It sounds like hype, man. Every title you name by him is sensational, right, Kevin? You hear that?
What's it called? Chaos something?
This is Ages in Chaos.
Ages in
And
Chaos.
so when you read through it, it's like everything is BS, 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 BS. And then he comes to this one thing right here. I'll show you. And I got one here. This is the one he has in here. It's all nice and drawn in. Let me give you a share here. Let me see if I can find. No, gotta go the other way.
Putting it in reverse, baby.
Yeah, we all got a bunch of books here today.
Oh, you brought your cache of books, and I brought some myself. We can share with our viewership.
Well, yeah, I got Here with 1,000 Faces from the college library.
Oh man, great! That's Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Oh, super! That's his classic book, man. I want that one. I don't have that particular book by him.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Mike, you got it.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the actual booty that was brought back by Tutmos III. All right, and this is in the tombs of Renkmeyer, who was his visor, and he went and he listed everything he has. And what Velikovsky says was, oh yeah, this was the treasure of Solomon, and it lists everything he had and the numbers of each one. And I go, what? Well, wait a minute, that's not BS. This is something I could verify, right? I can go, I can find this. And if you know anything about Egyptian numbers, the numbers are actually underneath here. They got like these upside down U's, and they use the base 5 counting system, and you can look up how to read the Egyptian numbers. And what you find out is that each item here, the type of number, the item and the number is exactly what is stated in Kings and Chronicles.
Okay.
So it's like, okay. I mean, if it just said shields, yeah, it's like, okay. I mean, that'd be like a generic booty that you would bring back. But this has the aspect. So it was Thutmose III, his conquest provided the backstory for the Kings and Chronicles Shishak. This here, though, the problem I have is that it combines the treasures of Kings and Chronicles, not just one. So I'm looking at had to been some coordination between the authors of Kings and Chronicles to have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Although they are supposed to have been written different times. I don't know whether he actually got it off of this list, off the wall, or whether there's probably a written record of this somewhere that they could have had access to.
Are you just saying the math for the number of items adds up from both books?
Right.
Or are you saying half of the picture is from one book and half the picture is from another book? Or is it something else?
Both books are in here.
Okay.
And the items from each of the books are in here.
Right. They're just spread around a bit, you're saying.
Right, just spread out through here. And I was just kind of wondering, Luther is like, why did they divide the items up, certain numbers in one book and certain numbers in another book, so these would add up to specific numbers?
Well, that's fascinating. About Kings versus Chronicles, that one is supposed to give a kind of a pro-Israel view and the other a pro-Judah view. Chronicles is more pro-Judah in the way that it treats the kings. So the material is told two different ways. I guess you could use two different sets of numbers. I have found numbers, for example, that are in Chronicles that are not in Kings, and those numbers are significant. Let's say King David's coronation. So at David's coronation, all the tribes are given. I think it has a lot of twos. What is it? 2 Chronicles 20. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, at King David's coronation, it talks about 4,600 Levites, 46 with 2 zeros. And then what do you read in John in the New Testament? It says that it took 46 years to build the temple. Jesus is having a conversation with the Jews there. It all fits together, and it's in Chronicles, but that particular detail is not in Kings, as I recall. And one more thing, who is it that was in charge of the temple? It was the Levites, and the numerical value of Levi is 46 again. So yeah, I mean, one book as opposed to the other could be more sensitive about the numerics. One could make use of it, and the other maybe not so.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how these treasures relate to some of the metaphors in the Bible, and because I know like the 12 stones or the precious stones are the 12 signs of the zodiac. So what about the treasures from the foreign cities? Because I know the foreign city might represent like the bottom half of the zodiac, and the top half might represent like Zion or the mountain of God, because King David is Mount Zion in Samuel or Kings. And then the lame and the blind are outside the city. That's the night cycle or whatever. So that would be not necessarily a place where there's these riches, but where they're being taken from, or I don't know. How do you think that relates, the pottery and stuff relates in the Bible? I don't know.
I don't think it relates at all, to be honest with you.
Okay. Okay.
I know, most of the cities that Joshua conquered are astrologically in Pisces, Pegasus, and going up to Cygnus and Draco and Lyra and those types of places.
Okay.
Not sure how you're relating that below above the zodiac.
Well, I know like
treasures.
there's the idea in Psalms where there's the potter and there's the clay. And clay is used as a description of like Jerusalem or the material world, and then clay is the feet of the statue in Daniel 2, and then in Romans he talks about we are the potter, and should we say to the potter, should the pot say to the potter, do this with your pot, or and the idea of the creation is made of clay, or the pots and the pans and the different items, whereas the creator would be something higher than that, or that would have some sort of teaching about that. So that's kind of where I'm trying to understand some of this stone archaeology stuff too.
Yeah, Michael, Kevin got me on to the polarity of the zodiac, the top half and the bottom half. And I have found that to be a very useful bifurcation. It's all over. Once you look for it, you can't unsee it, because it really is prevalent. So it's almost as if, the loyal guys are the top half of the zodiac, and then the rebels, however you want to contextualize that would be the bottom half. The negatives, the fall and the winter as opposed to the spring and summer, however you characterize it. But it does seem to be all over the place. So I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't see the zodiac that way, like you guys do. It's bad guys and good guys are up and down all over the place. I mean, most of your bad guys are going to come from the north. They're going to come from the constellation of Draco, coming from the north. Your Philistines are down in the south in Aquarius and stuff like that. So I just don't see.
I think they're interchangeable for sure. I think sometimes the zodiac, the top half of the zodiac might be the whole zodiac, or sometimes it might be flipped. Like Newt and Geb is all of a sudden the female is on top and the male is on the bottom.
Hey, that sounds interesting, doesn't it, Michael?
Well, that's the way the Egyptians had it, yeah. But,
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So
have you guys want to see the Holy Grail?
Yeah, Michael, everybody wants to see the Holy Grail. Do you have it?
Yeah. Oh, I got. Yeah, sure. Of course I do.
Of course.
If you recall, Remember the Indiana Jones Last Crusade movie, huh? Good movie, huh?
Yeah.
Probably it
yeah.
wasn't. Yeah, it was far better than that Temple of Doom. So there they are at the end. They're Sean Connery. He's going to die. Can't let Sean Connery die. So
Correct.
Harrison Ford's got to figure out which is the Holy Grail, because the Holy Grail will give him life, right? The
Okay.
mystery of the Holy Grail. It does two things. If you drink from the Holy Grail, it can give you everlasting life, or it can give you knowledge.
Right.
Two aspects, right? From the Holy Grail.
Okay.
Garden of Eden, what did you have? You had tree of life, tree of knowledge, right? They gave you the same things.
Okay.
Epic of Gilgamesh. What did he want? He wanted a plant at the bottom of the ocean that would give him eternal life. Right? So we have these common theme elements, which is what I stressed the last time. Theme elements and not exactly structural elements. And right here is where it's all at. There's your Holy Grail. You got Hydra, which is the water snake. Okay.
All right.
So it gives you the impression of the Gilgamesh whole thing that's at the bottom of the ocean. And here we have it by Eve and Adam. So it's right between Adam and Eve right here.
So that's the crater.
Right. That's what that is. Yeah.
Okay. What are the constellations for Eve and Adam, Michael? What are they?
Eve is Virgo and Adam is Leo.
Ah. Okay.
Okay. What happened? Okay, she comes out of the. I think we talked about this last time, or maybe I talked about it with you, Ninti, Lady of the Rib, and we talked about where her name came from. I know we did that last time.
Yes.
But yeah, she came. This was one big constellation called Assad, and it went from Cancer all the way over to Libra, and they probably made it into one big constellation because of the precession of the solstice. So when it went through there, this was one big lion, and Eve's head would have been right about where the rib was. So that's why she came out of the rib of Adam. Now, later on, the Greeks said, oh, this is all patooey. We're going to break all this stuff up. And there's no big constellation Assad. We got Leo over here, and we got Virgo over here. And Virgo's head is on the tail. So what they did was they created a midrash that stated that Adam had a tail and Eve came from his tailbone. So I'm not, to me, that's kind of like another little fingerprint that, that shows that how they changed the constellations and they changed the story to suit it.
Ah. Okay.
So what about booties is that? Because I know David Warner Matheson talks about Eve and her husband Virgo and booties.
Booties was in my book. Booties is the story of Joseph in the pit.
Okay.
That is him. The governor is Booties is a governor essentially. That's Joseph eventually became like a vizier in Egypt. And that was a story of him in the pit. There's a lot of elements in there. The star Arcturus, the purple garnet star Arcturus, was the coat of many colors that he had. Actually only had one color. And in the New Testament, Arcturus would become the garnet robe or the purple robe, the mock robe that they put on Jesus. So yeah. Now you mention that. See, the constellations, you have your main zodiac constellation, and then there are smaller like satellite constellations that are part of the story with it. And then when one zodiac constellation or group ends, somebody either dies or they say, hey, the story is over. If you look in Genesis on the story when he talks about Jacob, you have Jacob, oh, he's being born. He has this thing with Esau. He goes, he marries the ugly lady, the cute one. They have a bunch of wives, and he goes back. He makes it up with his brother Esau. Then they go. Reuben, I guess, takes his handmaiden Diana, gets raped, blah, 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 blah. And then they go up, and then I think Rachel dies, and it's like there's a star which is up in Ursa Major. There's a star in Ursa Major. I think it's Capella in the tail, which is also the name of the same star in Auriga. So they were both represented Rachel. That's where she was from, and that's where she died. Kind of interesting. And then there's a tense problem that I have that says this is the story of Jacob. Now, after all that, it starts. This is the story of Jacob. Gideon. I got a lot of Gideons. They gave them away for free. They got. Says these are the genealogies of Jacob, but I'm thinking that they have that tense wrong there. That should be this was the story of Jacob, and his story ends at that point, and all the stuff about Jacob from there on out was added, inserted material. So at that point, we start with the story of Judah. We start with the story of Joseph, and Joseph goes into Egypt, and that's where which is Tar. So then that ends the Tar's group. So Tar somehow got associated in this group with Bodes and the Northern Crown, which is out of the way, but that's how it worked.
Okay, Michael. I like what you said here about the transition to a different zodiacal group. Now, you have something that I have never seen anyone point out before, and that is the use of the number 40 in telegraphing in the text that we're about to change the zodiacal group. So this is what comes to mind with that. John the Baptist.
That's not quite. It's not the group. It's a specific constellation, the 40. It doesn't refer to the whole group. Just one constellation.
Thank you for the correction. Okay. Let's go with an obvious Aquarian figure like John the Baptizer. Okay, John the Baptizer is the water bearer. He's an Aquarian type figure. Jesus gets baptized by him. He goes into the desert, the wilderness, for 40 days, 40 nights. Here we go. According to your theory, there's some kind of a change that has to take place. What is the change? What's going on with the constellations there? And I guess that would come out in the wilderness journey, whatever it is that Jesus experienced in the wilderness.
The wilderness would probably be the same wilderness that Moses was in. It would be the constellation of Cetus. That's my guess. I don't see how it would be different. I mean, it could be a different constellation, but they're both wildernesses because there was both vast empty spaces in those constellations. Now, I know he was taken up on a mountain. The mountain that we have in there is Sinai. So I don't know, but it doesn't say, hey, he was taken up on Mount Sinai, but it was, that's probably the same star though, I'm guessing.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, in order to follow the footsteps of Moses, because, the point in Gospel of John that Christ gave us grace, Moses gave the law. So, yeah, I guess that would be Sinai because Jesus has somehow got to pass that and surmount that in order to get to his mission and purpose. That makes sense to me. How about it, Kevin? Does that ring any bell with you?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking of Galatians chapter 4 where he talks about the two Jerusalems, which are then kind of in Hebrews 12 used as a parallel to the two mountains. So there's the mountain of sin, and then there's the mountain, the new Jerusalem, or the new Mount Zion. So there's that sort of polarity between the old and the new covenant displayed in these two mountains. And like Moses, he goes up the mountain a bunch of times, but it seems like he goes up near the beginning of the wilderness period to get the law, and then at the end he dies on the mountain. And
that was a different mountain though.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then there's another mountain even in the Noah story at Mount Ararat at the end of the 40 days of, well, it's actually 5 months of of the flood. So then so I'm thinking the flood is sort of like the material realm, the mother, the emotions. Sometimes water is used as the emotions, um, and this is the Aquarius, perhaps, and it's at the end of the flood period, which would be the rainy season. Probably would be in the around Aquarius, and then they land on the mountain after the flood. So this could be something to do with the equinoxes, which would be sort of the authority of each half of the zodiac. That's how I'm kind of looking at it.
Uh, no, that's nowhere near where I'm at, but that's okay. The flood is Argo, and the Noah when he lands is Orion.
Okay.
Aquarius is the death of Samson, and I don't have the twain's meeting, but hey, hey, I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of just kind of puzzling it together. I haven't read your book, so I'm just trying to puzzle together some of what I'm hearing.
Let me give you something here that I discovered while I was researching the numbers and the stars and the letters. One of the things he comes up and he mentions is that when a new star comes in to being, when they discover a new star, they have to add another letter to it, right? You got a new star, they have to add a letter for that star. So it totally changes everything. So that changes the word that constellation would make up. And what the author was saying is that's either one or two things. Either God is going to raise hell, he's going to cause destruction on earth, or it's like a new hope, a new covenant that he's going to have with man. He's kind of changing directions when he creates a new star. So there's two places where we have oscillating stars that I found, where a star is no longer seen and then seen again. One we discussed last time, which was Mount Sinai, which changes, and that's where he got the 10 Commandments, and we got this new covenant with man. And there's another one I discovered recently, which is kind of like out there, but it's in the Argo for the flood. There is a star there that's real far south. It goes from 14 what was it for the stars? From 14 to 6. So the 6 is it's a barely visible illumination. The 6 is barely visible. I'm not even sure if they would even see it or whether they could even see it from where they were at. But if they did, and that star came in there, and that oscillates every 20 years, and they could say, okay, we have to change this, and this would show a destruction of the Earth by putting this new thing in this constellation. That's just a working theory.
Okay. So yeah, Argo is. Do you think that's connected to this 40, or with the Ark story, then perhaps?
Yeah, 40 days is he was on Argo. Okay. Moses is the rudder, the steerer, Canopus. He represents Argo. And if you go into the Midrash, it talks about the physical features of Moses being this bright white type guy and everything else. And it practically talks about the star itself.
Oh, wow.
And then, he's 40 days. And then when they land, now he becomes the constellation Orion. The three stars in the belt represent his 3 sons. And then he has the sons who would then be the servants, the 4 sons of Canaan. That's in the foot of Orion. That's the hair. That's like a pedestal that he puts himself on. There's what's known as the tent scene in Noah. Very important scene where the son goes in with a cord. He does this unspeakable act, and he comes out, and the brothers have to go in and cover his father up. What he did was he took the cord and he unmanned Noah. Okay, just took it right off, buddy. And what that represents. See, and that's the same thing there, because that is the same thing that happened to Osiris. Remember, he was missing, cut in different pieces, and that was the piece that was missing. He
Right.
represented Orion. And then there was an Assyrian one, I forget what it was, but he actually bit off the organ in that one. And there's a similar one with Greek mythology, does the same thing. And there is right in the middle where Orion's manhood should be, there is a nebula, which shows that, hey, there's something missing here.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
the interesting thing about that is that nebula really isn't visible. It's like one of those things that's barely visible, but you really would have to look for it to see it.
Mhm.
And there's about a dozen things I discovered that fit into my theory here if they could see just another magnitude.
Right.
You know, they could. So I'm guessing maybe they could see a little better back then. They had maybe something to aid them looking. I know the Chinese would look at the stars through a tube that would help them out. You know, not any glass, but with a tube. I've read something that they might have had a primitive type telescope back then, but there's nothing, certain on this. But it seems that they, from the myths, that they could see a little bit more than what we can see today.
And you're getting
Michael.
You're getting that from the
go ahead.
I'm just hearing the midrash. It sounds like I need to read the midrash to understand some of these practices.
I read there's one written by called Hebrew Myths and something else. It's written by two authors. One of the authors was Robert Graves, who is a famous historian. He did the I, Claudius series for public television, I think it was on. And it goes in there, and it goes through the midrashes, which is kind of like the story themselves. And it's really boring, but what's good is the footnotes. You read the footnotes in there, and it gives you all the Greek comparisons, which is great, because when you get the Greek comparisons, you know what constellations they're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So
Michael, is his co-author Raphael Patai? And I'm not sure because he has written.
Yes.
Okay, right. Because he has written books with Raphael Patai. That's the other guy, Kevin, with that. And what jogged my memory when you talked about the Greek, yes, they wrote a book on Dionysus together. And I have that one. So, and of course that's relevant too, because Dionysus is represented with the wine and with Virgo and with Vendomeatrix, which is the vine in the right hand of Virgo and so on. So yeah, okay. Graves and Patai.
Okay.
Right.
So how global was this? Like, so a lot of this midrash stuff is just from is that just from the Hebrews?
Yeah, the Hebrews wrote it. They have a hard time assigning exact dates to this stuff. They're saying it could be as early as 200 BC and as late as 400 AD. Something in that area. They generally like to go with the later dates. So it kind of shows that the rabbis were quite aware of the astrological myth all the way up to about 400 AD. And the classical explanation for the midrash is all of a sudden the Greeks came, they conquered the Jews, and they had all these questions because the Greeks were all these great thinkers and philosophers, and the Hebrews couldn't come up with stuff on their own. So they said, okay, so they came up with stuff like, where did Cain's wife come from? Okay, so they wrote explanations about Cain's wife in there, and they came up with different stories of Cain and Abel. Both were born with twins, both had a twin sister. Eve wanted Abel to marry his twin sister, who apparently was a hottie, and Cain's twin sister looked like Cain in a dress. So Cain wanted Abel's twin sister, and then that's why he really killed Abel, was over a woman. And and not because he didn't please God or anything like that. So,
Huh.
Right, right. Of course. Most
and
of
of
the
course that
time
makes
it
more
is. It's
sense to
over a
me.
woman.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
of
oh,
course
the
it does.
smoke didn't go up. Oh, it's like, come on, you're gonna kill somebody because the smoke went the wrong way because the wind's blowing in a different direction. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like, hey, a babe, yeah, I can see it for you, you know.
Right.
The truth comes out, guys. That's good.
Okay. So yeah, where did you get those pictures that you were showing us at the beginning? Was that just from your research? Is that in the book itself?
Some was from the internet. The pictures of the constellations I get from Bullinger's book.
Okay.
He wrote the what was it, Gospel Scriptures in the Stars, Gospels in the Stars, or something. He wrote that
Mhm.
around the 19th century. In fact, there's certain religions that are still following Bullinger today, and they're writing books based on his stuff. And I think we talked about Bullinger last time.
Yeah, yeah,
But
we did. We did.
yeah,
I wish people would take him more seriously and connect with his work, because I think they'd find some fruitful lines of inquiry if you'd follow it out. But people give lip service to it, right? The seminaries
I,
aren't really
yeah.
interested.
I didn't think Bullinger was correct. I thought Bullinger would have been good. I wanted to combine Bullinger and Gerald Massey and kind of come up with something, and I couldn't do that. They were both out.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find either one being. I did find some good stuff in Bullinger that related to the Old Testament, but I think his stuff on the New Testament was not quite correct. He
Okay.
disagreed. For instance, like the Northern Crown, he claims the Northern Crown was this grand crown used to glorify Jesus, and for me, it was the crown of thorns. So we're like, if there's any grand crown to glorify Jesus, it would be the Southern Crown, not the Northern Crown.
Interesting. Why the Southern Crown, Michael? What is it about the Southern Crown?
Southern Crown represented Solomon. That was the crowning of Solomon. That was the final. I got to move this chair for a second. Hold on.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Anyway, the Southern Crown represented Solomon. That was the final chapter, the final aspect of the cosmic myth was the crowning of Solomon. The interesting thing, now you brought that up, now we're going to get something. This thing goes full circle because it starts off with Eve, who was a representation of the goddess Ishtar. All right, starting off giving birth to everybody. At the end, we end up with David and Bathsheba, who gives birth to Solomon. That's the last of the great cosmic myth that covers the entire cosmos. The star that represented Bathsheba was the same star that represented Ishtar. So what we have is this great, it's almost like a coming and closing at both ends. It comes around, it starts with Ishtar, ends with Ishtar, ends with the same goddess. Now, the story of David is so edited. I was looking at that. And when somebody tries to say something is false or how should I say this? You know when Trump is lying, his lips are moving, right? I mean, and in the Bible, when they're trying to present a story really hard to say this is true, this is true, this is true, it couldn't be this, I'm like, no, they're doing it. It's a head fake, doing it just the opposite. So I'm thinking, so I'm looking at the story of David and Bathsheba and Uriah and what this really was, and I'm taking out different bits and pieces because it's tossed in there through resumptive repetition. And I'm looking at one of the things that they did was the first child of David and Bathsheba from their illegitimate relationship that they had. They had this illegitimate child that he died, and then it was the second child that became Solomon, not the first one. So they went out of their way to get rid of that one child. All right. So it was actually that first child from that relationship. And then what they did is when he met Bathsheba, she was bathing, right? And it tells you, oh, this was the cleaning from her menstruation cycle. It was her periodic cleaning, right? They're trying to let you know she's not pregnant. No, she's not pregnant. And I'm like, they're going out of their way to try to let you know this. So, hypothesis. What if she was pregnant from Uriah at that time and wanted to entice David? And Uriah wanted her to entice David so that she would sleep with David and that David would think that Uriah's child was his. And then Uriah, when he came back, in order to make sure David thought the child was his, he didn't sleep with his wife that night. All right, that was a plan so that his son would become the ruler of the kingdom. And that was David's punishment for fooling around with another man's wife, is that somebody other than his son would rule the kingdom. And Uriah went willingly to go into the front of battle and get killed so that his son would be able to rule the kingdom. And he gets killed in the Star of Antares, which is also known as the rival of Mars. It's right in front of the bow of Sagittarius. So it all ties in together. And he was the sacrifice of the autumnal equinox. He was Tammuz, the consort of Ishtar, who she takes off her clothing one piece at a time to go into the underworld in order to rescue him. And in some stories, Tammuz comes back as somebody else. He reincarnates. So it's possible when people of that era looked at this story, they're seeing it knowing these old myths, and that perhaps that Solomon was this soul of Uriah coming back. So they did everything they could to take that out of there so that everybody would believe that Solomon came directly from David.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty complex.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to probably go back and listen to that again.
Right. I mean, you just did what do you want to call it? Sacrilege. You just rocked the scriptures, Michael. And before that, you were talking about Trump, so you're jeopardizing all our federal funding. What are you doing here? What are you doing to us? No, but
well, you can edit the Trump stuff out.
Yeah, we'll have to put some beeps in with the
right.
the squares.
Yeah, put some beeps in, man. That'll take care of it. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, you don't want to say that man's name on the air.
No.
He gets enough free time.
Yeah. Got the Feast of Trumpets.
Feast of Trumpets. There you go. There you go. That's how you take care of it. That's right. And then you say huge. Don't pronounce it huge, just huge. Huge Feast of Trumpets. Yeah, everybody will get that.
Bigly.
That's a great story about Uriah. Great supposition on your part.
It's just a hypothesis. I'm not sure, but I know that there's something more to that story than they're not telling us. They went their way to do a lot of disguising.
Well, I think you're right. If you look at Uriah or Urijah, which would be the same thing, and it should mean my light is the Lord. Now, you're not going to have a character with a name like my light is the Lord to be extinguished so easily. That's not going to go down like that. Oh, the light of the Lord got put in front of the battle, and then his life got, and his light of life got snuffed out. That's not going to happen. So there's more to the story. I'm convinced there's more twists and turns than we've seen.
Yeah, and they tell you what a great guy Uriah is during the whole thing. It's like man, this guy should be king. You know, it's like,
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, looks like we got 10 minutes left on this Zoom thing. So, just letting you know.
Oh, all right, good. We don't have long, so we're going to be wrapping up. I love this idea about Kevin. Did you have something?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, what can you tell me more about your book a little bit? Just so I get caught up a little bit. I know you've done an episode already.
yeah,
I'm meeting you for the first time, so
yeah. The book, it's a basic story is that the Old Testament stories, all these fantastic stories, are actually cosmic myths,
right,
and each one it's a story of the constellation. In order to come up with the cosmic myth, I had to go through and edit, cut out quite a bit of wordy words that have nothing to do with uh, the cosmic myth at all. And when you do that, it comes up with some really nice different stories than what you actually have in there. I was really, the irony that comes through, like the one just gave you. There's irony in this. There's humor in this that you don't see because of all the stuff that's been added. And it's a very concise cosmic myth. It's very, it goes pretty much in a contiguous fashion, starting with Leo and Virgo. It cuts back to Libra, and then it goes around to Cancer, Gemini. It goes all around the constellations that way. Samson is kind of a anomaly story that doesn't quite fit, but it's there. It's a little longer because it takes up Aquarius, but it has to reuse Leo and those constellations. And then it comes all the way back to Sagittarius and Scorpio, butting on the end of Libra where it had started. So it's very, covers the constellations. And this is the only time I've seen any ancient religion actually do this type of thing. I mean, there's all types of stories there that are cosmic myths, but a complete story that goes around in the entire circle to create not only the cosmic myths, but a history. And this was done to make it look like it was done probably in the Bronze Age. And I was guessing probably around 1900 and something BC, which I know now is wrong. I'm thinking now this is probably written well after or 500 BC, probably 400 BC or earlier, because the constellations show Greek influence and Assyrian influence and Egyptian influence, and even in one case it looks like something maybe Rome was influenced in there. So that would make these very late writings, but it was made deliberately to look very, very old.
okay.
Of course, I concur with you on the revisionist dating, particularly with the gematria, the onomatology, the allegory. You've got techniques that were influenced, as you say, by the Greeks, by the Romans. You've got themes that were influenced by the Persians. Yeah, all of that opts for a late date. No question in my mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also a strict minimalist. I don't believe in the United Monarchy having ever existed. I believe that Solomon was based on the life of Hammurabi. And in fact, there's a guy who wrote a paper or thesis describing the contemporaries of Hammurabi and the contemporaries of Solomon. And he matches them all up. And he says, look at this. These guys had to have lived in the same era. So, being the good Christian that he was, he's saying Hammurabi must have lived 1000 BC, and he was a contemporary with Solomon. And I'm like, dude, you just killed your whole paper. It's like, no, do that. Hammurabi was like 1700, 1800 BC. That's in stone. You're not going to be able to move him up to 1000. You want
Oh
to take
no.
Solomon and move him back to where the great city states were? Hey, do that, but you're not going to be able to move him up.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So his whole thing got thrown out. No one even looks at his paper. Just like Velikovsky. Hey, he has the Kings and the Chronicles all there listed. From the works of Breasted, they're all there, and the numbers are there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one's going to see that because the guy's a quack, and no one's going to read his book. And the same thing with this guy. He's out there. No one's going to read it. So
Right.
there's a lot of books where you can get one good tidbit of information out of, even though the rest of it's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I've been trying to get something good out of Section, but I can't. So, yeah.
So how did you start looking at astrology in the Bible?
Pretty much by accident. I mean, when I started studying the Bible, and while I was studying the Bible, I became godless, and then I started reading everything I could about the Bible. I read a book by a guy named Joe Jackson from the American Atheist Society, and he had something in there from Gerald Massey and some 19th century guys. So I looked them up. I managed to find some reprints of his, and I started reading him, as well as a dozen other guys, G.R.S. Mead, and those guys back in the 19th century. And then they had the thing about the astrology.
Yeah,
because I'm like, okay,
I'm interested in those books.
Kind of made sense, but nobody had put anything really together. They said, "Oh, this is this." Oh yeah, Judah Lion. Okay, he was Leo. I was like, "Oh, all right," but what about you got like 11 more of these guys, and then it's like, he said Moses was Cepheus and his wife was Cassiopeia and stuff like that, which was really out to lunch. So there's a lot of different things that, in fact, most of the stuff I ended up differing on these guys once I started doing my own research. About the only thing Massey he gave me the starting point of Leo and Virgo. And you'll see everybody who writes on this topic will start with Leo and Virgo, and they will copy Gerald Massey like hell. I mean, it's unbelievable. So where Massey's right, they're right. Where Massey's wrong, they're wrong. And I can't,
Have you read Massey's American disciple, Alvin Boyd Kuhn?
Absolutely.
What do you think of him?
It's, what, you're asking me to make a comment on a book I read decades ago, and I just don't remember the stuff that was in there. Although I'm reading Kuhn, and I thought, gee, this really isn't. Look, he was able to get stuff out of Massey that I didn't see.
Right. That's what I was aiming at. Right.
Yeah. He was apparently the way he reworded stuff, or he probably knew. I think he knew him, and he had lectures from him and stuff like that. That he was able to transcribe into English that I could understand.
Sounded like he was like I just started reading his book, Who is This King of Glory? And at the beginning, at least, I haven't got very far into it, but he's kind of analyzing or criticizing Christianity at the beginning and saying, like, how can you have two masters if there's one within you and one outside of you in history and stuff like that. And then so it seems like a lot of the astrotheologists do that, where it's a combination of criticizing the logic of the doctrines, and it's showing the obvious nature.
Gerald Massey had a lot of weird stuff. Everything is Egypt. Egypt.
Yep.
So everything that the Bible had is compared to Egypt. There's no Babylon, the Assyrians. He does very little of their influence, or the Greeks. Everything is related to Egypt. Egypt goes to the sub-Saharan, and he gets involved with Bushmen, and when men were man apes and different things like that just kind of really out there. Some of his stuff that he does is he compares Egypt to the naming of British pubs. Okay, the headless man or something. Oh, this is Osiris. And I'm like, sometimes a headless guy is just a headless guy. It's like,
Right,
could it
right.
have? Who knows? You just can't.
Right.
So I'm kind of skeptical on a lot of his stuff. He draws parallels where there probably shouldn't be parallels, and draws lines and connections that I kind of question. So,
But Michael, you have demonstrated in both your books that many of the stories in the Old Testament that we thought were familiar are actually talking about celestial myth. The corollaries are quite obvious. And if you want to check it out, if you want to learn more about it, Michael's 2 books are on Earth as It Is in Heaven. Did I get the right title of the first book? On Earth as
let me correct you on this a little bit. On Earth as It Is in Heaven,
do.
The Cosmic Roots of the Bible is actually probably the only book that I've written on the astro myth. The other books that are out there, the ones that you quote, I took this out. I took a number of books. One is I wrote the Bronze Age Bible, which I don't want anybody to, please don't buy that and read it. But unless you want to see what the old script looked like, because this is a very difficult book to read. So I broke it down into 2 aspects. One was the actual text itself that I put in there, and the other part was just the astro myth. And I broke the astro myth down, saying this is this and this is this, and I left out all the labor pains on how I got there. A lot of the footnotes and the end notes and the sourcing that goes into it. In this book, not only do I source every tidbit of information that I have
Very good.
in a standard format, I also put the page number on there, and I quote the source. I quote the actual word itself. So while I got 100,000 words of text, I have 40,000 words in the end notes.
I saw that, and so that's really the one, folks, to know Michael Ledo by. On Earth as It Is in Heaven. It is available in the hard copy version and on Kindle.
No hard copy.
There's no hard copy.
Paperback.
Just Kindle?
Paperback.
Paperback, thanks. Paperback and Kindle. All right, get that right.
Yeah, the other book, I mean, if you want to pick the other one up, it's an easier read. It's the baby, all right? This is all the labor pains. And there is a second book. It was called Bible Bloopers, Evidence That Demands a Verdict Too. And I rewrote that, took the mistakes out, and I put that into the Skeptics' View of the Bible. This is written back in the 90s. Some of it is kind of like out there, and some of it has some good information too. So that's my other book. I touched on the astrology thing in here, and so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, folks. He's like the living scripture. He talks about he's constantly moving, developing, progressing. Michael Ledo, ladies and gentlemen. Michael, we've got to go. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, it's the second time. We don't want it to be the last time. Will you come back and see us?
Oh, if I'm breathing, I'll come back.
All right.
Great.
All right. We're gonna hold you to that. Kevin, you got anything you want to add as we take it away?
I'm just really interested to read your books now, and I'm looking forward to asking you some more questions. So yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing some sales too.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Myth Vision with Michael Ledo. All right, have a good evening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you.